Misunderstanding OET listening could be the difference between a score of 350 and a score of 300. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about OET listening so you can boost your score. Before we get going and look at each of the OET listening subtests, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit that like button as well. OET listening overview. So OET listening consists of 3 subtests, Part A, Part B, and Part C. There are 42 questions in total, and the entire test will take around 40 minutes to complete on test day. Importantly, the total time includes the time you need to write down your answers. So you'll be writing your answers as you go directly into the question booklet. You'll get 2 minutes at the end of the test to check your answers, but make sure you understand fully that you only hear the audio once. There are no second chances in OET listening. The most common score that people want is 350. To achieve this score, you need to get at least 30 out of 42 questions right, or around 70%. It's important to understand that the audios you hear on test day will be on general healthcare topics. In other words, you're not going to hear anything that's profession specific. The accents that you hear on test day will include Australian English, British, American, New Zealand, Irish, Canadian, South African, and others. Now, before you begin the test, you'll have to fill out some personal information on your question booklet that's gonna look like this. You'll have to write down your candidate number, your names, your profession, the venue, the test date, and you'll need to put your signature. Now that we've covered the basics, let's look at each of those subtests one by one. OET Listening Part A, Overview. Here is what Listening Part A looks and sounds like. Your job is to fill the gaps in a set of patient case notes as you listen to a consultation between a patient and a medical professional.
Hi, it's Daniel, isn't it?
Yes, Daniel Anderson, that's right. Hi, Dr. Hampton.
I haven't seen you for quite a while. What brings you in today?
Yeah, I probably should have come in before now.
Okay, well...
You will actually hear 2 different and separate healthcare consultations, each one lasting for about 5 minutes and each one worth 12 points because each one has 12 questions. Now, the consultations will include different medical professionals. You might hear, for example, a patient talking to a dentist, doctor, physio, pharmacist, occupational therapist, dietitian, optometrist, podiatrist, radiographer, speech pathologist, or a vet. Listening Part A, Instructions. Now, when you actually get to open up your test booklet, you're going to see a context statement above the first Listening Part A set of questions. That context statement is important and it looks like this. The context statement will say something like, you hear a GP talking to a patient called Daniel Anderson, or something like that. Then it will say, for questions 1 to 12, complete the notes with a word or short phrase. You now have 30 seconds to look at the notes. There are 2 critical instructions here. The first deals with the 30 seconds preparation time, which I won't touch on here because that's in the methods lesson on E2 test prep. The second is how you write your answer, and that's important to understand. How to write the answers for Listening Part A. The answer, the word or short phrase that you need to write down, does not change from the audio in any way. In other words, whatever you hear in the audio, you write that exact same word or short phrase as your answer. You don't change it in any way. Imagine you're looking at gap number 1 here, and imagine that the patient says, it's been going on for a couple of weeks now, and I think it's been a bit worse recently. There are 2 possible answers that you would write down, and both would be considered correct, worse or a bit worse. Notice that this word is unchanged from what was said. In other words, it's the exact same word or phrase that was said. But be careful, you will lose points if your answer repeats words from the notes, so don't double up on words. B, it adds information that is not in the recording. Or C, contradicts yourself or makes your meaning unclear. So all up, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to be listening for a word or short phrase to fill that gap or those 12 gaps. Spelling in listening part A. Now, the good news is you are not penalized for bad or incorrect spelling. However, the examiner does need to know what word you have written. So if it's really spelled poorly and they don't understand it, you will lose a point. You also may lose a point if you screw up your grammar. But you need to be careful. For example, let's imagine the answer to this question is the word headaches, plural. But you write the word headache, singular. So the difference between headache and headaches is not so much of a spelling issue, but more of a grammatical issue. You see, on those case notes, it might be misinterpreted that this patient had a single headache, whereas they may have been having multiple headaches. So you do need to be careful when you write down that word or short phrase that you get the grammar right as well. Abbreviations in listening part A. Now, OET officials say that you can use abbreviations in listening part A to fill a gap. However, they say you should only use extremely common abbreviations like BP or SOB, for example. My suggestion to you is that you don't use any abbreviations because what might feel familiar to you or common to you may not be to the OET examiner. So you're better off just writing out the full word or phrase. Now, who says the answers in listening part A? Is it the patient or the medical professional? Now, the answer to this question is important, and the answer is that the patient will most likely, more than likely, most of the time say the answer that you need. However, just be careful because sometimes it might be the medical professional that also mentions an answer. But be careful because you need to pay attention to both speakers. What you will notice is a series of subheadings. The reason why you need to listen to the medical professional carefully is because he or she will be the one who will be directing the conversation. The subheadings, patient, presenting symptoms, and recent history, for example, will help to guide the conversation. You need to be careful not to get lost in the listening part A audio recording. That's why you need to pay attention to the medical professional because they're the ones who are going to be guiding you through the subheadings. The importance of synonyms. I won't go into too much detail here about what synonyms are, etc. But basically what you need to understand is what's written on the question booklet is going to be different from what's said. The language is going to be different, but it's going to be synonymous. It's going to have very similar, if not the same meaning. For example, imagine you see on the question booklet the phrase short of breath for 7 days. Now, the transcript or the audio won't say these exact same words. It might say something like, I couldn't breathe properly for the last week. It was a bit shallow. Can you see how the audio and the phrase actually match each other? That's what makes this a good listening test because it's all about meaning. So what's written here is going to be different from what's said there. You need to pay careful attention to the meaning. Next steps. Okay, so from here, what you want to do is watch the methods lesson on the E2 test prep platform. Then you want to practice and you also want to join the live classes because it's good for motivation and you can ask questions to our expert teachers. OET Listening Part B, Overview. In OET Listening Part B, you're going to see 6 questions that look and sound like this.
So, who have we got here?
This is Adam King. He was brought in with a dislocated shoulder. He has Marfan syndrome, so we've seen him before with this. Last time he was here, the shoulder popped back in while we were putting his arm in a sling, and he was able to put it back in himself just by relaxing his muscles, but he's in quite a bit of...
As you can see, it's a 3-answer multiple choice question. The audio file will go for about a minute or so and will be a single speaker, 2 speakers, or possibly 3 speakers. Now, at the top of the question, you're going to see a context statement. It's really important that you pay attention to this because it sets the scene of each question. This context statement tells you who the speakers are and, importantly, what's happening. This one says, you hear a nurse in the emergency department discussing the care of a patient with a doctor. Then you will see the question. It might say something like, what do the speakers agree to do? Then you will see the 3 answer options. What does OET Listening Part B test you on? OET Listening Part B tests you on a range of listening skills. OET Listening Part B questions test your ability to listen for detail, gist, opinion, and purpose. Now, don't be fooled by the answer options. There are 3, right? 2 of them are going to contain distractors. That is, they're going to contain words mentioned in the audio, but they're going to be wrong in some way. Either they're going to contradict or they're going to be missing critical information. Only one of them will actually be correct. What are the listening topics? The types of audios you'll hear in Listening Part B are general in nature and they're taken from medical workplaces. You'll hear topics such as patient issues, patient handovers, team briefings, workplace changes, best practices, etc. So none of these audios are going to be profession specific. They're going to be comprehensible by anyone with a medical background. Timing. So when you do Listening Part B, the timing is a little bit tricky because it kind of moves quite quickly. Let's understand it. So you're going to hear the narrator say, now look at question 25. Then you'll hear the context statement read aloud. You hear a nurse briefing her colleague about a patient. Now read the question. Then there will be a 15-second gap before the audio begins. Then you will hear the audio play. At the end of the audio, there will be a 5-second gap before you hear the instructions for the following question. Now look at question 26. That 15 seconds where you get time to actually look at and read and understand the question is really important. And then remember, you only get 5 seconds to actually answer the question once the audio finishes. If you're concerned about this, check out the methods lesson on E2 Test Prep. Next steps. Okay, so from here, what you want to do is watch that methods lesson and then do some practice and maybe even do some practice with the transcripts, which we have on the E2 Test Prep platform. And you should think about joining a live class or 2. OET Listening Part C, Overview. OET Listening Part C looks and sounds like this.
Hello and welcome to Health Research Roundup. For decades, people have been asked to fast before they have blood tests to check cholesterol levels. However, a new research report from an international group of experts suggests that this is not necessary.
You will see 6 3-answer multiple-choice questions based on a lecture or an interview. You will then see another 6 3-answer multiple-choice questions based on a separate and different lecture or interview. So there are 12 questions in total and 2 different audios. Listening Part C tests your ability to follow a lecture or an interview that's going to be on a general healthcare topic. Again, you don't need to have profession-specific understanding of the audio. Remember, there are 12 questions and 12 points here. How does Listening Part C work? Rather than wait until test day to hear these instructions, let's read them now so you can be comfortable on test day that you know what's going to happen. Part C. In this part of the test, you'll hear 2 different extracts. In each extract, you'll hear health professionals talking about aspects of their work. For question 31 to 42, choose the answer, A, B, or C, which fits best according to what you hear. Complete your answers as you listen. Now look at extract 1. Extract 1, questions 31 to 36. You hear an interview with Christine Erickson, for example, who's talking about her research supporting non-lipid fasting blood tests for cholesterol. You now have 90 seconds to read questions 31 to 36. So there's some important information here. First, you need to answer the questions as you go. Second, you're going to see and hear the context statement, which is important. And third, you're going to have 90 seconds to prepare before the audio begins. If you want to learn about that, watch the methods lesson. The difference between an interview and a lecture. It's highly likely that you're going to get both a lecture and an interview on test day, and they're a little bit different to each other in terms of the way you listen. You see, one of the trickiest things in listening Part C is actually making sure that you're staying on track. And when you listen to an interview, it's easier because the interviewer will actually signal when the question is changing, when you're moving from one question to the next. Whereas when you're listening to a lecture, the lecturer will actually give signals or signposts to tell you when you're switching between questions. What does OET Listening Part C test you on? OET Listening Part C tests your ability to listen for detail, gist, opinion, purpose or reason, attitude, cause and effect, problem solution, suggestion or inference. Next steps. Cool, you now have a very comprehensive understanding of OET Listening Part A, B, and C. What you need to do now, just before you click that subscribe button, is click the link in the description below, go across to E2 Test Prep and begin studying.